From betting scandals to alleged match fixing, the UFC has had its fair share of mess-ups. Fixing, if you may. Sometimes the fans wonder if the F in the UFC means fixed. Let me give you an example. Remember the Fry versus Hall fight? For fighters to succeed, maintaining good health and avoiding overexertion were vital back in the day. It used to be a win to progress kind of thing. Winning several fights against each opponent was required to advance in the UFC tournaments, and the quicker the fights used to end, the better it was considered. But too fast kind of makes it suspicious, no? And being fast was exactly why many people were shocked, because Don Fry defeated Mark Hall in the semifinals of the 1996 Ultimate Championship with an Achilles lock. You want to know how long he spent doing it? 20 seconds. Just 20. Such a win obviously led to the claims that the game had been rigged. There were rumors that both the fighters' managers had a pre-fight strategy to make Hall take a dive. Why, you may ask? This way the Predator would get to face Tank Abbott in the finals. But in a subsequent interview, Fry did stand up for himself, saying that he tightly held the lock and denied all claims that his opponent had taken a dive.
So I don't know, sometimes the alfalfa we get.
If you think this was rigged, you definitely don't know of Oleg Taktarov's versus Anthony Macias. If Don Fry's manager bribed Mark Hall to take a dive to leave his fighter fresh for a tournament final with Tank Abbott, chances are he might have taken inspiration from the UFC 6 incident. At that time, Oleg submitted Anthony with a guillotine choke in just 9 seconds and created a promotion record that has yet to be broken. It's one of the most talked about and controversial fights in UFC history.
Russia. And my fighting style is a combination of Russian sambo, combat sambo.
Like, guys, why couldn't you make it less obvious? Taktarov claimed victory over Abbott, which sent him straight to the tournament final. Even while the game may have been done, the rumors had just started. Many people think the Pitbull was told by Taktarov and Macias management to make sure Taktarov won. Plus, to spice things up, Macias was considered a more well-known and well-rounded fighter. Kinda made zero to no sense that he'd get taken down that easily. This reminds me of Rich Franklin and Ken Shamrock paired together in the first final back in 2005, and it appeared like the UFC wanted rising star Franklin to succeed retiring legend Ken Shamrock.
Spoken previously about the fact that he was in support of a rule like that, and so that's something that we're going to be bringing here to the U.S. when we come.
Yet what really occurred seems to support it. Ace TKO'd Shamrock to end the fight in the opening moments. And hooray, you guessed it, shortly after suspicions surfaced that the promotion had paid the world's most dangerous man to take a dive for Franklin. I mean, you go back and watch those tapes. No way that was not rigged. Anyway, Shamrock, however, didn't exactly appear like he took too much damage and instead used the moment to successfully lock up a heel hook attempt. So it wasn't a dive. Shamrock instead appeared to be trying a diving leg lock. By the twilight of his career, Ken most likely found himself outmatched by a competitor who had substantially more preparation. But at least this one has some reason, because Leo Kuntz and Taiyun Bang was something else. Unlike the rest of the fighters on this list, their lightweight bout at UFC Fight Night 2015 was more than shady. Back then, there didn't seem to be much wrong with the fight, which ended in a split decision victory for Bang.
남자는 한 방, 인생은 타이밍이라고.
남자는 한 방, 인생은 타이밍이요?
But get this, only a year and a half later, the MMA community was caught off guard. Again, why, you may ask? It was because Bang was given a 10-month prison sentence in South Korea for allegedly accepting a bribe to throw the fight with Kuntz. Apparently, 3 brokers had allegedly paid $92,160,000 to the Supernatural to throw the fight. And guess what he did with it? The fighter went ahead and set half the bribe on Kuntz. But before he could go through with it, something made him reconsider, and he eventually pulled off the victory. All that didn't stop the accusations from flying in. Just like between Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez. Everyone is aware that Conor McGregor knocked out Eddie Alvarez to win the lightweight champion at UFC 205.
Equal to me, I'm going to rip your whole head off, and that's it. I tell it every time. Eddie's a solid competitor.
Not just any knockout either. One of the greatest promotions in the company's history, and boy was it great. Before finishing Alvarez quite early in the second round, McGregor repeatedly kept dropping him. But Khabib Nurmagomedov, the Irishman's greatest adversary, wasn't happy with the outcome. Prior to his 2017 bout with Tony Ferguson, the Eagle gave a strange interview in which he said that he didn't comprehend Conor versus Eddie. The Dagestani claimed to have seen Alvarez stumble a few times. He took that as a staged fight. I guess that's why Conor hates him. But ouch. Khabib subsequently said that many people had concerns about the contest. Even so, no proof has ever been shown to demonstrate that Alvarez took a dive or that his match with McGregor was staged.
At featherweight, at lightweight, and now at welterweight, across 3 weight divisions. So I'm very...
Khabib's claims show how disrespectful he is of the notorious more than anything else. And with that, we may turn our attention to the recent UFC gambling scandal. Most people would agree that the November 5th featherweight matchup between Shilan Nuerdanbieke and Darrick Minner wasn't particularly compelling. Strangely enough, the UFC betting odds for the matchup substantially shifted in the days preceding the contest. That's because the majority of bettings began with Nuerdanbieke as a small favorite at -200. Yet by the time the fight started, those odds had increased to -450. Any individual who bets would tell you how uncommon that is. Given that most bookmakers didn't anticipate the fight to generate much attention, the line change was odd to say the least. While Nuerdanbieke was the favorite to win, there were other factors at play.
我时刻准备着，不管是发生什么3回合或者
Also, an oddly high percentage of them were betting on him to win by TKO or knockout. That was unusual too. His previous 3 UFC fights had all ended in decisions. Things started to get worse when you consider that James Krause trained Minner. The fight was the subject of an inquiry by U.S. Integrity. So what was the UFC president's reaction to the event? He originally denied the debate ever existed, claiming that it was impossible. But it wasn't until when the FBI became involved that he realized how serious this was. He remarked that, despite the potential financial gain, doing this act might land you in federal jail. Additional to that, both Krause and the combatants have had their licenses put on hold until further notice, and it's caused problems everywhere, with several sportsbooks refusing to accept UFC wagers. The first sportsbook in that state to prohibit UFC wagers were those operated by the New Jersey Division of Gambling Enforcement, especially those when James Krause served as a coach, promoter, trainer, or boxer. Betting on UFC fights was also outlawed in December by the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, or AGCO. AGCO is actively taking corrective action to address this persistent issue. After doing that, the operators may demonstrate that UFC wagers or other betting products adhere to the registrar's standards. This choice was taken with the understanding that not all insiders are prohibited from placing bets by the UFC. After Ontario, Alberta was the second province in Canada to prohibit UFC wagering. The Alberta Gaming, Liquor, and Cannabis Commission is keeping a careful eye on the issue, nearly identical to the AGCO. They will continue placing wagers on Play Alberta as they are confident that the UFC regulatory agencies are adequately safeguarding their fighter. And that was all for UFC fights that were allegedly rigged. Until next time.